Hi, it's Deborah Hamilton, and welcome to the MAAP community call. Tonight's going to be a big night because we're going to talk about something that everybody hates to do. I have to say, I do too. Writing down the plans you want for your pet. So, Mark, I'm so glad you're here. Jan, welcome back. Sally, welcome back. I'm going to check in with everybody to make sure that everyone is well. I usually do this, Mark, just so you know. There are repeat visitors to our community. So we check in, I get to know their dogs, I get to know their desires and wants, and pretty much personalize the community call as well as give general information. So for you and for the benefit of everyone who's listening, and it's amazing, Rose tells me that these are downloaded and listened to so many times, it's crazy. I guess 6:30 on a Wednesday might not be convenient, but getting the recording is really convenient. So the MAAP plan stands for making a plan for the care of your pet if something should happen to you. Appointing caregivers, MA. A, addressing the needs of your pet, and then publishing it. So when we talk about the MAAP program, we talk about a full picture of what you need to do to care for your pets long-term, short-term. And what we usually do, we're here for about a half hour. I don't take up a lot of your time, but I get you thinking. And sometimes it's sort of like a fire hose. I have done that. However, these fire hoses are necessary, especially if Connie is on from California, because the fires are up in the hills from her house. And so fire hoses are right in her neighborhood. So again, I'm Deborah Hamilton, Hamilton ADR, North Carolina. There she is. So we were talking about being hit with a fire hose, Connie. And I said, yes, Connie's usually here and is in the fires of California. So I'm creating some information tonight on why you need to write it down. So again, the MAAP plan stands for MAAP, making a plan. You got to sit down and make that plan. You have to appoint caregivers, and at least 3. One is not enough. Sally will let you know why. Address the needs of your pets. You have to tell people whether or not they take medication, whether or not they're afraid of thunder, whether or not they get along with other dogs. Important information to share. And of course, whatever you write down in your MAAP plan has to be published with your vet, with your attorney, and with, of course, the caregivers who are and your family. So I'm going to check in with everyone. I do this all the time. So Anne, if you'd like to, or Mark, if you'd like to, I will check in on you in a minute, but I'll let some of the regulars update us on how everyone's doing. Sally, how are the girls? I hear it's very hot in New York.
It's hot and humid, and they're saying much worse tomorrow, thunderstorms. We're on the East Coast, just a little bit close to New York City, and they say temperatures are 92, but feel like 100, and I have a 12 and 13-year-old whom I share with Deborah, and we're just doing the best we can, getting up at 5:30 and walking until they turn around and come back. And then, unfortunately, it's like maybe 2-minute walks after that. It's just dreadful. And I've heard from my other friends, they've got their dogs on treadmills inside the house, but it's just too hot and humid.
Yeah, it really is. Junie does not like North Carolina, I can tell you, because he wants to go outside and run around, and after about 5 minutes, his tongue is lolling out the side of his face, and I have to drag his butt in the house, and then he sucks down water. And if you have a deep-chested dog, like I do, I have an Irish setter, you always have to worry about bloat. So you can only give them like 2 inches of water, and he's looking at me like I'm the meanest mother walking. However, I want to make sure he doesn't get sick. So Jan, how's everything with you and Tonka?
Everything is good. Yeah, not too far from Sally's. So right now it's 94, Yeah. So it's really hot, and
Yep.
Tonka's really draggy. He's trying to find parts in the house which actually are the coolest parts of the house.
I know, even when you have the air conditioning on, they don't seem to get a lot of relief. It's really incredible. And of course, Connie from California, how are the fires? And you're probably pretty hot as well.
Well, actually, I just looked at my phone, and according to AccuWeather, we are, I hate to say it, folks, 78 degrees.
Yay!
But I do have the AC on because, of course, the house gets very, very warm. And
Carrie, get very, very feisty.
Yes, Mama's getting feisty here. Her son is giving her the stink eye, which she does not take kindly to. But actually, the headline in the Los Angeles Times this morning said that we are, even though we are bracing for a horrible wildfire season. So far, knock wood, things are pretty quiet in
Yay.
California, but the rest of the country is burning up. And of course, oh my God, Europe is burning up. I remember being in the UK probably in the early 90s when it was about 94 degrees. And of course, no place is air conditioned. And we thought we were going to die then. And there were a few restaurants that were air conditioned, but not at all. And I remember being on the 4th floor of the V&A Museum, Victoria and Albert Museum, and at around noon, one of the days that we were there, and the heat, of course, rises, and
Right.
it was just sweltering. It
And the
was
glass
unbelievable.
ceilings
So
and the big windows, so that would make it even hotter.
exactly. So I cannot imagine what 10 degrees more than that must feel like. It must be absolutely horrible.
Yes.
I even saw that it was well over 100 in Edinburgh.
Yep.
And I have been in Edinburgh in March when I thought I was going to die from the cold. And no matter how many layers of clothes you had on and, boots up to your hips, you thought you were going to die from the cold. And especially at the top of Edinburgh Castle, where I was one day. So, I just cannot imagine 103 degrees in Edinburgh right now.
No, I know it's amazing. It really is incredible. Even the national parks were affected this year because there's been such a huge snow melt that a lot of the park was flooded to the point where it was closed. And I had a lot of friends who were going to the parks after our national in Colorado for Irish setters and couldn't because they couldn't get there. They couldn't get to the park. They couldn't get to their camping ground. It was unbelievable. But yeah, it's been really interesting. So if Mark would like to check in and let us know what part of the universe he's from, Sally's from Connecticut, and so is Jan. Connie is from California. I'm from North Carolina. So if you'd like to pop in and let us know the name of your pet and where you're from, we'd love it.
Well, I'm close to Connecticut. I'm up in the Boston area.
Great.
So I'm dealing with the heat just like everyone else right now, and got 3 Goldens, Kai, Bear, and Junior. 3, 2, and 1. So they're all young and spry and keeping myself and my wife busy.
Oh yeah, 3, 2, and 1. Yes, golden retrievers and a lot of hair.
Yes, but our diet, or their diet, seems to minimize shedding, and they just got a really good grooming a couple of weeks ago. I don't know what it's called, but got a lot of the under hair out.
Fabulous.
Cool them off for the summer.
Yeah, that is so important to keep them cool because they tend to sometimes get hot spots. So we always want to keep them cool and dry so they can't get hot spots. So thank you for being here, Mark. And let me know if there's anything that you want to cover that's important to you. I'm just going to talk about the writing in a minute after I check in with Ann and Kieran. Ann, if you'd like to check in, let us know where you're from and what your pets are. I would be grateful.
Hello, thank you for having me today. I have one little doggie named Stella. She is a 9-year-old mini labby. And we have, just like so many of you, we're having hot weather as well. Right now it's 100 degrees, real Phil. And, but we're staying cool. We do our walks early in the morning, about half of what we normally do right now. And we're just doing great. So I'm looking forward to this. I am in St. Louis, Missouri, so I'm right smack in the middle of everything.
Yes, you are, and I'll be there in August, which is part of like never want to be in St. Louis, Missouri in September, better than August because it's hotter than the hammers of heck in August. But September we'll be there, and it'll be a little better. My husband's originally from St. Louis, so he's.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, he's
what part of St. Louis?
Ladue area. So he.
That's real close to me.
Oh, great! He went to Horton Watkins. We're coming in because he's being honored as a graduate of Horton Watkins. No.
Yes, that's the Ladue school district.
The Udals, whatever high school that was. He's in Ladue High School. That's it. He is going to be honored in September. So we're coming in. So maybe we can.
Wonderful.
Maybe we could catch him.
Wonderful.
So let me check in real quick with Kieran. He is our resident author. He wrote a great book named When Your Child Asks for a Dog. Let One-Eyed Leo guide the conversation on responsible dog ownership. So this always helps. So Kieran's from Tenerife and Ireland. How are you doing now, Kieran?
Hi, Debbie. Hi, everyone. Well, the good news this week is Tenerife is a lot cooler than Ireland, which is quite funny. and I've been keeping an eye on the temperatures in the UK, and they are
Pretty miserable.
Pretty miserable. 104 is what they've
Degrees
had in the last
Fahrenheit,
few
yeah.
days.
Yeah.
And there were two interesting items that really sort of drive the message home, which was they had to close a lot of the airports because the tarmac had simply melted. And the rails, the trains didn't run because some of the rails themselves, the metal itself went up to 143.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, my husband's from transportation, and they have the big air show in London at either Heathrow or Gatwick. I'm not quite sure. So they have the huge new jets that they could not fly because they were melting into the tarmac. So yes, I know that London had a bad spat there for a while. But I'm so glad everyone's here. I'm so glad you all are thinking about making a plan for your pet. Tonight, we're going to talk about the writing part, the publishing part, because most people say, well, I've told my kids, I've told my husband, I've told my family, and that really doesn't help you that much. So for Mark and for Anne, you know what I'm going to say, guys, because it's my first thing. Make sure tonight when you get off the call, you put on a 3x5 card. In the event of an emergency, my dog stay put, please call these three people. It could be, you know, your wife, your spouse, your sister, your brother, your mother, your father, someone who's not living with you, because God forbid something happens to you in your home and no one's home to take the dogs. They will go to animal care and control. And unless you have something in writing that releases those dogs to A or B or C, they won't be released. And if you're unconscious and you don't answer your phone for the requisite 3 to 5 days that they hold it, it might go to a shelter. Then if it goes to a shelter, it might go to a rescue. And if they're purebred golden retrievers, they're going to go to a golden retriever rescue and likely be adopted because they're beautiful and young. And if they are, you won't get them back. So this 3x5 card is the most important thing you're going to do tonight, and you're going to learn tonight, because it is of the utmost importance that your dogs stay in your house if something happens to you, or if they're in your car and you're on the road and God forbid you have an accident, there should be a 3x5 card easily visible to EMS or anyone who's going to be taking care of you if God forbid you have an accident with the dogs in the car, that says the same thing. These dogs can go to animal care and control, but these are the three people who have my permission to come and get the dogs in the event something happens. So I always start with that. Everyone knows this is my mantra. Everyone has it on their refrigerator. If you don't like to put people's numbers up on the front door, the back door, you can always say, in case of emergency, my dogs are not to be moved out of the house. The people to call are in the yellow file by the refrigerator or the yellow file in the front hall, and easily found. Because what you want to do is you want it to be idiot proof. You don't want anyone to take your dogs if you can help it. If you're in a car accident, they usually have to take your dogs. But I have had things happen, and my dogs were always in crates. So I just took them out and kept them there until somebody came. Excuse me, and I wasn't taken away, thank God. But tonight, Mark and Ann, the one thing I would love for you to do, I know they're up in Jan's house and in Connie's house. Kieran doesn't have a pet. He just helps people have responsible pet ownership. And Sally has it up in her house because it's the one piece of information that is so important. So again, the MAAP plan stands for something: make a plan, address the needs of your pet, appoint caregivers, and publish. So when you publish, it means you write it down. And you need to write down whatever the plan is that you make. So if your kids are going to take your dog, if your parents are going to take your dog, if your neighbor is going to take your dog. I speak often about the nosy neighbor. We love nosy neighbors because nosy neighbors will see EMS coming or see that something's happening and let them know, I know what Jan wants to do with Tonka. So please leave him in the house. I have this piece of paper here that says, in case of an emergency, nosy neighbor can stop the dogs and leave them in the house, because nosy neighbor knows who Jan wants to take Tonka in the interim. The nosy neighbor doesn't have to take Tonka. She just has to advise everyone that she knows who's going to come and take Tonka. So that's what you really want to do. And it has to be in writing. And if you have 3 people, if you have 1 person, and if you have no one, I know that if you have a breeder, they would probably want to be on the list of people to be called in the event the dog needed to be picked up, or dogs needed to be picked up. Because Mark, like you, I have several dogs. Connie has several dogs. Jan is the only one who's, Jan and Ann are the only ones who are normal here, because the rest of us have more than 1 dog. And really, you definitely need someone who's going to pick up the dogs and take care. Hi, Susan, how are you? So Susan's a regular too. She's from Virginia, and she has a lovely Catan who's about 2.5 years old. So was gotten during the COVID pandemic. So she has a little bit of camp fever, because she wasn't necessarily socialized as well as Susan had done with her prior Catans. And so we're working with her and some trainers to help her have a great relationship with Maggie. But to continue down the write it down lane, if it isn't written down, it's not going to happen. And if all of your plans for your pets are written down in your will, I just need you to know you have to die. And I know you don't want to die. I don't want you to die either. But if all your plans for your pets are in your will, unless you die, those plans don't come to fruition. I had a client who got very sick, really sick. She had 3 dachshunds, lovely dachshunds. And her attorney let it slip out of her will. She wasn't dead yet. That in the event that she couldn't take care of the dogs, that the breeders were supposed to be called, and the breeders were called, and the breeders came and took the dogs because she couldn't care for them. And she had a 1% chance of surviving. So you know what happened? She survived, and the dogs had been placed by then. And so she wanted her dogs back, but she had nothing in writing that said, okay, we can place the dogs with people, but it would be temporary. And the people who were taking care of her affairs while she was knocking on death's door did what they thought was best, and everything went kaflooey. So you really need to write down what it is that you want. So she had talked to her pet caregiver about what she wanted. I want them to go into a kennel. So they were in a kennel for about 6 weeks. And the power of attorney person said, well, she always told me she didn't want the dogs to stay in the kennel for a super long time. So let me call the breeders. And the breeders came and found great homes for the dogs. It wasn't like they didn't have great homes. And the dogs moved on. But when she recovered, she wanted the dogs back. And the only way the people would take it would be if they kept it. And so this became an issue, because what was it? Nothing was in writing. Nothing was in writing except that she knew she had to turn the dogs over if in fact something happened. So if you bought your dog from a breeder, go back and read the contract if you have one, see what it says. If you rescued your dog from a rescue, go back and read the agreement you signed to see what you need to do, because I will guarantee you most breeders have a first right of refusal where you have to call them first. So they would be one of the people who you would put on the list of who to call. And they really are requiring you to do that. I'm now in the midst of a contentious relationship breakup where one party took the dog, but the other party bought the dog and signed a contract where he couldn't give the dog to his ex because he had to give it back to the breeders if in fact it didn't work out. And he didn't do that. And the ex says, too bad, it's a contract violation and you're not getting the dog back. So quite frankly, you really need to write down the progression. So writing is so important. When you make your plan, write it down. Write down everything about the care of your dog that you would like going forward if something happened to you. Then what you want to do is you want to find caregivers. And that's piece that I've spoken about on other programs. But what you want to do is you want to look at your neighbors, you want to look at your family, you want to look at your friends, and you want to look at, say, the vet techs or a dog walker, or even people who you play with in the park. I remember having an older gentleman, he was so cute, out in Long Beach. I gave a program and had people in a senior living situation who all had dogs, because all these senior living situations allow people to have 20-pound dogs. So they all had 20-pound dogs, but nobody had a plan for what would happen to that 20-pound dog. They said that their kids would take it when they moved in, but then of course their kids never want to take it. So then this dog goes to a shelter or wherever if something happens. So you really want to make sure that you talk to everyone. And I said to them, do you talk to anyone at the dog park when you go? Do you have a dog walker? And they go, yes and yes. And I said, well, why don't you ask the dog walker if they could take it for a short period of time until a rescue could come, or until the family member could come, or until the breeder could come? And they go, I never thought of that. Vet techs do it as well. People who your dog likes, right? When they're playing at the park and they like Fido, Fido's owners could take it for a short period of time, but they have to know what the parameters are, and that has to be written down. Most of the people who come to our workshops usually say the first thing is, I don't have anybody. I have no one. And I'll check in with our regulars, but it seems that even when you have people lined up, sometimes things happen. You can almost guarantee that if you have 3 people who are going to take care of your pets in the case of an emergency, at least 2 of them will be busy. And if you have set up with a friend for years over wine that you would take care of each other's dogs in the case of an emergency, either A, it's not in writing, right? So she'll give your dogs away like this woman did, thinking that the woman was not going to survive, or they move into a condo and they can't have a dog that's more than 50 pounds and they already have one. So they can only have one dog and it can only be 50 pounds, and your dog's a 200-pound, I don't know, Mastiff. So you really need to not only find the people to take your dogs, but write it down. Write down who they are, write down what they're going to do. And then every year, what do we do, guys? Remind them that they said that they would take your dogs, because they forget. I know I forget what I did this morning, so I know. Let me check in with Ann and Mark. Is there any additional stuff, or do you have any questions on just the writing part or any other piece?
No, it seems pretty straightforward so far.
Oh, good.
And we're trying to figure out the caregiver portion on our end.
Yeah, the caregiver portion can be sort of troubling at first, but if you really sit down and breathe, I remember, so my long-term colleagues here have heard this story before. I remember during COVID, I had moved from my house where all my neighbors knew me to a rental where no one knew me, and I was only supposed to be there a year before COVID. Then COVID hit, and I said, oh my God, I don't have anybody here who can help me if my husband or I get COVID. And I walked the dogs like you probably walk the dogs, and I realized that there were 10 or 15 homes that had pets. So I wrote a 3x5 card that said, in the event you have an emergency, I live at 8 Brookside Place. This is my telephone number. And if you need me to take care of your pet, please let me know. I'm happy to take care of your pet in your house until somebody can come or until you get better. And I think I dropped off 10 or 15 of them, and at least 8 or 9 people dropped by my house to see who this crazy woman was. And they gave me their number and their address. So they said, if the same thing happens to you, call me. And that was my mission. So Mark, that's one thing. And Anne, that's one thing you can do as well. If you have neighbors who have dogs, you don't really want your dog to leave the house if you can help it. But if you can find a neighbor who can at least let it out in the fenced in backyard. I'm a big fan of never letting someone walk your dog unless your dog knows them, because, you know, they see a squirrel or a bunny. At least in my house, you see a squirrel or a bunny and you are taken down. In Sally's house, you see a white dog, you're taken down. And the same is probably true for Connie, for little rodents as well. I don't know. I think Jen has a well-behaved dog, so that's probably not true. But let me check in. We have about 5 more minutes. Let me check in with everyone for pearls of wisdom that I might have forgotten here. So let me start with you, Sally.
I just have to say, I always have 3 or 4 people, and every time I really need them and we're going away, for some reason, all 3 or 4 are not available, and I'm just scrambling. So just keep updating all the time and talking to everyone you meet. Yeah, and keep looking for recommendations, all logical.
Yeah, and keep them close because you never know. Having 10 people who you could reach out to is not too many. I have to tell you, not too many. Connie, what do you think?
Let me unmute here. Well, not only for your vacation caregivers or for a temporary caregiver, but also for your more permanent caregivers in case you're incapacitated or, God forbid, you die. One of my so-called permanent caregivers I'm going to have to replace now because she's a Wheaton breeder, owner, exhibitor. She's a beautiful handler and handles her own dogs. She is also a very successful management consultant in retirement. She took retirement early from the Defense Department and set up her own consulting firm for nonprofits. She now has 3,500 clients all over the country. So she is always up in the air somewhere, literally. And in fact, she has stopped showing her very, very pretty girl whom she finished last winter because she doesn't have time. So I'm going to have to find a replacement for her, for a more permanent solution in case, God forbid, something happens to me and my 2 dogs are left. So always keep in the back of your mind, it's not only your temporary people, but also your more permanent people who, due to life circumstances, may need to be replaced.
Yep. Check in. Jan, what are your thoughts?
I think I always heed all the car directions because I was in an accident in November and thankfully, everybody was fine and Tonka was fine, but it was a 6-lane highway and 3 fire trucks and 2 ambulances and, in the middle of, massive traffic the day before Thanksgiving. And I think to myself, okay, well, we were really lucky, but that, we were lucky. And there really needs to be a card in my car that says, this is where he needs to go, or this is who to call, and they'll know what to do or whatever. So there is now a card in my glove compartment, and then also a card that's kind of stuck or like adhered to the back where he usually is.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Just to let them know. My dogs travel with me and they have all of their information and the caregivers on their crates at all times because it just, God forbid. I just want people to know what I want to have done with my dogs. And also I give the people who are the next step the note that says, yes, I'm the person who Jan appointed to come take Tonka because it really sometimes people are, officials are officious. And so being able to have that in writing saying, yes, Sally, Deborah Hamilton can come. And Deborah Hamilton has that note that says Deborah Hamilton can come and take the dogs in the event something happens. So it really is so important to write it down. Kieran, any words of wisdom? You always have things. Oh, no, wait 1 minute. I'm going to check in with Susan. How's everything, Susan? And do you have anything to add?
No, I'm just wondering, if there is an accident, would the dog be taken to the animal shelter and then they would call the people that are on the card? Or
if you are incapacitated and being driven off for EMS, they will take them usually to animal care and control. The police might have a holding for them. It depends on where you are and what they do. But usually animal care and control is called either on a car wreck or in a house where they're carrying you out. Animal care and control is called. They will make all attempts to call you. But if you are unconscious, we've talked about the woman with the Afghan who had her hip replaced and they told her the dog would still be at animal care and control. 4 weeks later, it was adopted out of an Afghan rescue and she could not get it back. So yeah, they will take it to animal care and control. And then if you have, like I do and Sally does and Connie does and Jan does, if you have that card in your car, they're going to call those people because that's what you said. In the case of an emergency, please call these people to get my dogs, because not only do they need to get your dogs if they're in the car with you, they need to get your dogs if they're home and you aren't, and you're not going home and you live alone, say. They need to know that there's a dog at home that needs to be cared for, and these are the people to call.
Yeah, I just wondered, what the protocol was, because it's a lot to expect people to drop everything on a dime and rush right over. Will they hold the dog?
There's usually a statutory holding, so it's between 3 and 5 days, sometimes 7, but there's a statutory holding of the dog at Animal Care and Control. And if they get in touch with the owner and the owner says, no, so-and-so is coming to get the dog, place it somewhere, but don't let it be adopted. If you're able to say that, fabulous. If you're not able to say that, then it will proceed to shelters and rescues. So it's always good to have something in writing in your car that says, no, this person's going to come. They might not come immediately, but they have, and then that's why we have 3 people, because somebody can come within 24 to 48 hours. And that's really the perfect time. You like to have them sooner, but at the most 24 to 48 hours. So, Kieran, I'm going to ask you again, because you always come up with something great by the end. And we're 7:01 already. Holy Toledo.
I would just add, there's always a need for revision, and just check that the plan is actually workable. That sometimes you may have a dog that has had a veterinary experience since the plan was written or revised or whatever, and does it actually reflect the reality that somebody would walk into?
Yeah. So perfect for you to say that, because not only do you have to check in that the caregivers haven't changed, you have to check in that the dogs haven't changed. So if you've got a young dog like Mark does, he has 3 young dogs. So one might jump fences, one might be perfect, and the other one might have a very exuberant hello. So you really want to know that what the dogs are right now. And then in a year or 2 from now, they're all going to be, and they might still be. So I'm just surmising that the 1-year-old Golden might be a little more lively than the 3-year-old Golden. Maybe not, but you really want to make sure people understand what they're getting, what they, do they get in the garbage? Are they on medication? When is their heartworm? I mean, that's medication every dog should be on, and, heartworm and flea control, so that they know, and these things change. So you need to absolutely, Karen, great, to say you really need to update these right away. Anne or Mark, do you have anything to add that you've thought of? Because I love to get new input or insight when somebody listens to this for the first time. I'm so glad all of you are here, as always.
No, this has been great information. It's information that I've just taken for granted.
Yeah.
My family will jump in and take care of my dog, and you just can't live that way. You got to make preparations. So I really appreciate it.
It's best for them too, because they'll know that your dog loves to sleep on the couch, is afraid of thunder, whatever. It's sort of like getting directions, how do you run the refrigerator? How do you run the dishwasher? Well, this is how you run my dog. They get their medication on such and such a date. They're afraid of thunder. They don't like white dogs, right, Sally? So my Irish doesn't like white dogs for some reason. Who knows? And it's just come upon her when she was 9. She had no problem with them before she was 9. So these are, as Kieran said, these things change, but writing it down, everything has to be written down, because it'll make your life easier and it'll make their life easier. I had a friend who passed away with 6 dogs. She wrote nothing down. Her family came into the house. Now she had a whole cadre of Irish setter people who came and started taking dogs, and her family, her brother, had no idea who these people were, whether or not these are the people she would want to take her dogs. So it really makes that transition, God forbid something happened to you permanently, that transition for your dog seamless, because this is what Anne wanted to have done with her dog. So I hope you join us again next week. We're here every Wednesday. We talk about different pieces. Kieran. We talk about different pieces of the MAAP plan at all times. So please join us again. This is, it's never boring, and we always add new things. Kieran, take us out.
Okay,
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, Anne. I hope to see you again.
Right. It's It is 4 minutes past 12 in this part of the world, which means today is the 21st of July.
Yes, you're on the 21st already.
Yes, and this is the 200th anniversary. The 21st of July, 1822, was the day the first ever animal welfare legislation was signed into law by King
Wonderful.
George.
Wonderful. Wow.
So
Is that
that's-
in England or that's anywhere?
No, that in England, but it was the first in the world as far as I
Right. That was
understand.
the SPCA, right? Or was it?
It was the prelude to the
SPCA.
SPCA. This was the Cattle Act, or as it was known as Martin's Act, after the promoter, who was Richard Martin, who was a lawyer and a military colonel.
Yep. It really is so important to remember that it's only been how many years, Karen, since we've really taken care of pets. So we really want to make sure that we take care of our own pets, as well as helping other people know that there's really a way you can help take care of your pet by writing it down. So remember, write it down, make it visible, make it easy to find. You don't want anybody to have to think about where your dogs are going to go or what's going to happen to them or who's going to care for them. You don't want anybody who's a stranger to think. You want them to have it right in front of them in writing. And also you want the people who are your caregivers to have it in writing too, because then it's redundant. We can talk about redundancy next week. But until then, please kiss all of your babies for me. I'm Deborah Hamilton, ADR, North Carolina. And of course, I love this wonderful MAP community that meets every Wednesday at 6:30 Eastern Time. Until next week, make sure you write that sign down and put it on your fridge, everyone. Take care.